Welcome back. I got another one here by Infographics channel. Continuing on the birth rate crisis and people not having kids, etc. Not good. Here we go.
Fast forward a few decades. U.S. manufacturing has crashed, the service economy is unraveling, hospitals are overwhelmed, and the once mighty military is suddenly exposed. Technologically, culturally, and economically, the powerhouse that defined a century of global dominance is running on fumes. And it all traces back to one ticking time bomb: the birth rate. What happens when a nation runs out of people? We break it down in today's episode of the Infographics Show. What happens to the USA if the birth rate drops even lower? If you've been paying attention to the headlines, the warnings are everywhere. Global birth rates are plummeting. And if the
Yes, they are everywhere. I pray you guys are paying attention.
trend holds, the consequences could be far worse than most people imagine. Some say we're heading straight into a demographic apocalypse, one where civilization as we know it simply can't function. And it's technically true. Young folks aren't having kids. Many aren't even having sex. And for those who are getting lucky, little bundles of joy aren't on the agenda. According to a paper in The Lancet, by 2050, 155 out of 204 countries won't have the fertility rates to sustain their populations. For decades, we were worried about overpopulation, and yet it's the specter of underpopulation that now has the expert.
It's the exact opposite that's seeming to be the problem. Yes, anyone who's 30 plus, 35 and up especially, I think we heard from a young age that overpopulation was going to be like the biggest crisis. What are the odds that it's actually the exact opposite? It's the inverse of that, as underpopulation. And that is really concerning. And this video is going to be a little bit concerning for those who are uninitiated with this topic. And unfortunately, I fit in the category the statistic of single, unmarried, and no kids, 30 and up adults. Okay, and there's a lot of us here. There's a large percentage of us here, but yeah, a whole new generation. It's a whole new era, just from the past 30 years. Because in my parents' generation, in fact, uh, the early Gen Xers and baby boomers, they were having kids in their 20s very often, and that was a norm and a high amount. In the 80 percentile or more of them all were having children, and it was a large amount too. So now it's super low. People who are having kids, like forget about 20s, bro. I almost don't even consider that age group as a reliable one for family building. But okay, 30s and up, okay, it's still way lower than ever, and people are waiting until their mid 30s to even get together, to even build families. Of course, that's kind of like, to be honest, if we're being honest, that's like the getting into partnership with the best person you can find available at this point, because you can't have the one you want, because that's unfortunately that's how life goes, right? So you're gonna have to go with the one you can get, etc. So yeah, on a macro level, there's a lot of potential concerns here. But anyway, let's continue.
Sweating and talking about civilizational collapse. By the year 2100, it's expected that 97% of nations will have a population problem on their hands. But for now, let's stick with the USA. The US
Let's pray we make it to 2100. But I mean, who knows?
National Center for Health Statistics told us that the number of births in 2023 in the U.S. fell to the lowest level in over 4 decades. We went from a baby boom after World War II to a series of baby busts. The U.S. saw almost 2.3 million fewer children born between 2008 and 2013 than had been projected. The main
That would be the generation. My generation would be 18 to 24 in this time period. I know because I was there. For sure, nobody was having kids. Not by choice. You know what I'm saying? Not like based on their own desire to have kids at that age, at that time. By this date range, that's what I take from it, is that my age group would have been late teens to mid 20s at this time. Now, older people probably were having kids, but they saying as a whole, it dropped down significantly just in this time period. So
Reason was the Great Recession, which, let's just say, didn't instill trust in the fertile masses. And now it means that we have fewer 18-year-olds than was projected, a number set to peak in 2025 at 9.4 million, before dropping to about 8 million by 2029. Let's not forget the global pandemic in 2020, a crisis that triggered what many are calling baby bust number 2. That means even fewer 18-year-olds in the years ahead. Sure.
it's funny because you would think when people are locked in the house together, especially if they're like married couples or whatever, especially if they're heterosexual couples, you would think that would like increase the likelihood of having children. But okay, fine. You're in a global pandemic and like a lot of things were shut down and hospitals were full of patients and what have you. Okay, all right. Economically, where it's unstable. Economics has become like the biggest factor, unfortunately, for family bearing, for childbearing. That wasn't the case a few generations ago. Okay, wasn't the case a few generations ago. Coming from a descendant, a second generation South Asian. Okay, grandparents had 10 kids on both sides. Okay, that was the norm back in the day, especially in South Asia. There's a lot of data on that as well, but it was a norm in U.S. and other developed countries to have a large number of children in the 50s, 60s, 70s too, I believe, for cultural, economic, all those reasons. But now it's people don't even really consider culturally as much, right? They're not tied to the cultural reason to have it. And then economically, just forget it. Like you can't even afford to buy a house. How the hell are you going to afford to have a kid or more? You know what I'm saying? Like, okay, does that mean you have to have a house to have a child? No. Does that mean you can still have children in apartments or condos or whatever? As long as you can finance it, yes. But the current global economy does not bode well for the majority of people who are in the age range to even have children or even produce. So yeah.
It might spare us a few viral clips of young guys launching themselves down staircases in flaming shopping carts, but it won't be good for the future economy. We're also living longer these days on average, so what's happening is we are seeing a shortage of young people and an excess of bald and gray heads. No disrespect to the elderly, but let's be...
Hey man, take it easy with that. Yes, some of us have genetics that are predisposed with nothing we can do about, but bald is beautiful.
Honest, they're not exactly fueling the economy with raw muscle, endless energy, and startup dreams. The economy needs a stable birth rate, not just to create stuff and say, do you want fries with that? But to consume. We'll talk more about this later.
We need consumers. Wow. As if we don't live in an overconsumption of a culture already, right? But yeah.
If we look at the first 2 decades of the 1900s, in terms of the crude birth rate, U.S. women were having 100 to 120 kids per 1,000 women at the ages of 50.
Okay, just for context, this is over 125 years ago, so a century plus a quarter century ago. Okay, that's the date we're talking about. And yes, they're having a shit ton of kids at the time, per 1,000 women. And how many were getting married? You have to. Okay, yes, historically speaking, if you break it down economically and historical context and cultural, yes, it was significantly greater 100 plus years ago, and it had to be. And now, in the 21st century, 2025, it's become more of like a luxury. It's not exactly a super necessity like it was back then.
15 to 44. It slumped to 75.8 in 1936, a down period as the world was eclipsed by political instability. After that, the birth rate started climbing again, hitting a
and baby boom's coming after World War II.
Peak of 122.9 births per 1,000 women in 1957.
122.9 births per 1,000 women. 1957. That's awesome.
Another decline followed, but that didn't stop the highly excitable writers talking about the environmental collapse thanks to the so-called population bomb. Then, from the mid-70s all the way to 2007, we hit a birth rate plateau in the US as it hovered at about 65 to 70 births per 1,000. Then came the slump. In 2023, the US birth...
Oh, shit. And Here we go.
birth rate was the lowest in recorded history at just 54.5 per 1,000. What's strange is that some states have experienced a much bigger birth rate decline than others. From 2005 to 2022, Utah, Arizona, and Delaware saw the biggest drops at negative 33.9%, negative 31.9%, and negative 31.2%.
I wouldn't even consider the data from these particular states. Like, who cares? Bro, Delaware? Who the fuck lives in Delaware? No offense, Delaware, but come on, man.
Respectively. But then,
People living in Delaware go to Philly or Pennsylvania or whatever to go work and shit.
you head over to Kentucky and things seem fairly stable at just a negative 6% decline. North Dakota, negative 4.3%, and Louisiana, a negative 0.3%.
These are not the sexiest states, if we're being frank. The one next to it, Texas, where I live, you're going to see a big difference there, but there's a insanely greater amount of population in those states.
And are also fairly stable. This is important since each state could have unique problems as birth rates keep dropping. As you'll see later, it could mean mass migration, leaving some.
I've never seen Alaska with a U.S. flag over it before. That's interesting. You know, it really shows you what this country actually looks like now.
States struggling to stay economically viable. So, what happened? Why did men and women start opting out of producing offspring? Well, after the war, in general, Americans were feeling pretty good about themselves. The economy looked healthy, and people were able to work blue-collar jobs and feel confident that they'd be able to get on the property ladder.
And kids were an asset at that time. Multiple children were an asset. Just taking my grandparents' example, they needed many children to maintain the household, to take care of the family chores, to help the family grow, and to be honest, there's not much else to do, you know, in that time period. Like, you're home a lot, you know. I mean, my grandparents, I'm sure they worked. Only my grandfathers, I'll be honest, worked. I believe grandmothers did not, but at least outside of the house, the work was inside the house mostly. So yeah, having a large family, large number of children was an asset. It's not really an asset today. It's just too expensive. The cost per child, what is it, 100K? Yeah, it's probably $1 million or something in their lifetime. It's a lot. So yeah, totally different time frame.
Cost in the future is a big deal where having kids is concerned. The total fertility rate, TFR, in the US in those days was 3.8 kids per woman, which is really high. Then, in the 1960s and 70s, feminism began to take hold in society. Birth control became more readily
Well, if it isn't our favorite F word, feminism. What a surprise.
available, and abortions were made more accessible. This saw the TFR hit about 2 kids per woman. In the 80s, it was between 1.8 and 1.9, which was just below replacement level, and now it's 1.6 and very likely to decrease again.
What do you know? We can point to an actual event that was a cultural movement with the intention of making life better for entire gender, right? Females. And look at the outcomes of these numbers, how steadily the birth rates have declined. So less babies being born by giving the... And okay, I don't want to get too political, but nobody is saying that a woman should be forced to have a child. Nobody's saying that a woman should carry a child in the case of extreme cases of like incest or rape or something. No one say that. Rape. However, with the advent of abortion, unfortunately, you give the right to life in the hands of the mother, which was never the case prior to 1960s, and they always just gave birth to whatever, to whenever, to whomever. So yeah, and now there's the birth rates have never been lower. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. Unfortunately, that's, if you want to be black and white about it, it does, kind of like this shirt, it does kind of stem to specifically the modern feministic movement. Okay. And what's funny is I grew up being very left leaning, and therefore very pro-choice, and it's a woman's body to do with what she wills, which is true. It is In fact, not just females. How about all humans? How about every human's body is to do with what they will? How about that? Okay, it doesn't have to be just gender specific. How about young boys, young girls, older men, older women, everyone? How about they all have the right to their body? Okay, but and besides that, right? But it's only a special scenario here that if you decide, if you get pregnant, however you get pregnant, which come on, let's not say that it wasn't. You couldn't have been done more to be prevented. If it's not in the extreme cases, and you do elect to have abortion, yeah, you are technically killing a life. It's sad, and we don't want to get down that rabbit hole today. But my God, if you consider how many of those happen nowadays, oh, it is insane. And imagine if that number reduced of abortions by like half or whatever, or 20%. That those numbers would be way up. I digress.
In case you didn't know, most countries try to maintain that level. If they can't, they sometimes get desperate, offering tax credits for parents and even cash prizes. In cultures where people on average
Bro, South Korea is trying this, and yeah, that is such a weird thing to think about, right? It's like, oh, the government's offering tax incentives, honey. Let's get together and make a baby. Or a lady I just met, though I never know, but you're attractive, and we're both similar age. Why don't we just get together and take advantage of this tax incentive? Because nothing says romance like taxes and government incentives.
tend to listen to what their government tells them, things can get even more intense. In China, the Communist Party recently got colleges and universities to introduce courses on love education to convince citizens that marriage and childbearing were the next big thing. Again, Westerners tend to be a little more difficult when it comes to governments telling them how to live their lives. This too will reshape the future economy.
That's literally the whole point of America, is to limit the control of government, right? Government is necessary, but I remember a history teacher said it's by definition inefficient, whatever. But yeah, but to mandate, or I mean, then you're getting into like totalitarianism, right? Like control your entire population, every aspect of their life. That's how you begin this process, right? Is by saying you have to do this, you have to do that. Now, obviously, without a governing body, you can't have a civilized society, right? Law, order, etc., infrastructure, right? Taxes, which is a mess anyway. But yeah, I I do second that, and Westerners do take a bigger. I think Westerners like us are more serious about not letting the government control every aspect of our life. But that being said, that doesn't mean society can't improve, or government can't improve, or both, or birth rates can't get better, right? So there's got to be ways to educate, promote, and yeah, improve your outcomes, right? You have to change your process if you want to improve outcomes in life.
As we told you, in the 2000s, we got hit with the Great Recession. Confidence in economic stability was low. People's attitudes also had changed. Many women and their partners didn't want the standard American dream, the white picket fence, 2 cars in the garage, and a vacation to Orlando. Millennials wanted freedom and adventure. Many were more focused on their careers than on bringing screaming balls of flesh into the world, and a lot had crippling student debt.
Screaming balls of flesh, that's crazy. Okay, I want to just make a quick note. If in the past, women I dated, if specifically the ones I really liked, if it happened to work out, I would most likely be a father right now. You know what I'm saying? Like, if both of us felt the same way about each other and wanted to make it work, it would have transpired, I'm sure, to a real relationship, and plus family and so forth. It just didn't happen. It is what it is. But I don't know. I don't know how many people are opting out of not having family because of because like their own fruition, their own desire to, instead of like they didn't have the opportunity to. You know what I mean? If I'd imagine if a lot of people are coupling up and stay together for years, like you're gonna eventually, then you're pretty much gonna be together, right? So there's no reason to not have babies. But if you don't have the opportunity or whatever, that's another story, right?
So having kids seemed out of the question. Then there's Gen Z. They just lived through a global pandemic, and before that, they watched the fallout from not just one, but two massive economic meltdowns. First came the Great Recession, and then came the largest
Man, they were in school the whole time. What does it matter? They're just getting into the workforce. They're like in their early 20s. They're all on for TikTok, and they're figuring out life and stuff. It's not that big a deal for them.
transfer of wealth in modern history. The result is a generation raised on uncertainty and soaked in cynicism. For them, buying a home is
It is absolutely raised in uncertainty and soaked in cynicism for sure. It's at an all-time high, but you have to go through life. You have to go through trials and tribulations to become a better version of yourself anyway. And life isn't how you view life is going to change. Okay, in your 20s, from your teens to your 20s to your 30s, and hopefully every decade passing as long as you're alive. So, yeah, everyone's supposed to feel anxiety, depression, or uncertainty at times. That's life. It's gonna happen. That doesn't mean you have to stay there, and that doesn't mean you can't find a way out or find hope or find relief. Okay, it is possible. Obviously, greater people than I have done that. Greater people than all of us have done that. So yeah, there's no reason to stay in this kind of a mindset.
just a milestone, it's a pipe dream. There's a lot of feelings of hopelessness going around, which is evident in certain death rates. Back in the boomer days, only about 15 out of every 100,000 Americans died from a so-called death of despair. For example, self-harm, overdoses, or illness related to drug abuse or alcoholism. In 2000, it was higher, but only 22.7. Since 2017, deaths of despair have been over 45 per 100,000. As a paper on the issue said, mortality from deaths of despair far surpass anything seen in America since the dawn of the 20th century.
I've never heard of deaths of despair, but that is depressing, I'll be honest. And yeah, okay, if you're looking at the macro average number of people, there's a large population, over 350 plus million. Yes, there's, if you consider how many car accidents happen a year, how many people die of heart attacks and heart disease and whatever, cancer, stroke, all that stuff, it's in the thousands. It's a large number. I don't know right off the top of my head. But yeah, for sure, when it comes to that, despair, if you fall under despair, yes, and you allow it to take control of you, yeah, it could lead to your demise, and that's terrible. However, that doesn't change the fact that a person has control of themselves and kind of their mentality and their work ethic to turn it around. Okay? Just because you don't get a job in your first interview or fifth or 10th, that doesn't mean you give up. Okay, nothing in life happens when you give up, for sure. And now, not to get too religious, but in Islam it says do not despair, right? Especially if you believe in God, if you believe in the universe, if you believe in divine, okay? Then you have a creator, which means by definition you have like a destiny, okay? And that means no matter how tough life gets, it's not over until it is actually over. You know what I mean? And by that point, it's not going to matter anyway. So, do not despair. Now, saying do not despair is not going to help. I know a lot of people to actually feel less, but anyway, yeah. As a macro, that's really bad. To see that generations are being affected by mental health and kind of the weight of the modern day economy and so forth. So I pray it gets better. I do. The job market is what it is. Nobody has control over that. Obviously no person, and definitely not the economy, right? So all we can do is whatever is within our control of our own individual world control, and that's all we should focus on.
When deaths of despair are statistically higher than all other unintentional injury deaths, you have a failure of society on your hands, a kind of cultural collapse, which affects attitudes about starting families. According to a study from the Joint Center for Housing Studies at Harvard, inflation rates on housing costs and bills have risen 10 times faster than wages since 2001. That study said as of 2023, 22.6 million renter households spent more than 30% of their income on rent and utilities.
There we go. It's back to the economics. Yes, economics is really tough, and yes, if you're making 50K, 60K, it's not, or less. It's not really wise to necessarily procreate right now, technically. But that being said, that didn't stop a lot of people. I just met a young, like, 22-year-old couple who have a child. I was like, wow, so kids are having kids now. That's crazy. Um, but yeah, I mean, there are people who do. You know what I'm saying? And guess what? They have to figure it out. Like, that's life, right? When you bring a life into the world, that life now takes precedence over yours. Okay? If you are responsible for bringing life into the world, that life takes precedence. And look, there are single parents with three or more children who are working 60 hours, 80 hours a week or whatever. Okay? I mean, it's crazy out there. There's definitely examples of all the above, and we're about to wrap it up here. But yes, economy sucks. Yes, the price of things are high. Yes, the job market is bad, or it's not great. Yes, the birth rates are lower than ever. That doesn't mean it can't turn around. That doesn't mean we can't take control of our life, okay, and focus on what is within our control to make things better. Okay, you can take control of your health, right? Workout, look up workout exercise routines. You can cultivate relationships. Okay, if especially if you're in bad ones, and trust me, we're all been in toxic bad relationships, and that could be friendship, that could be actually unfortunately your family too. With your family, it's I wouldn't say cut them off. I would say reduce your time and your socializing or whatever with them. But with the actual friends, yeah, you can choose your friends. So don't choose friends who are bad for you. Okay. And as far as the economy goes, like you're gonna have to do what's best in your own best economic interest, the viewer. Whatever that means for you is whatever that means. Okay. It could be 20 bucks an hour Starbucks or whatever they pay. It could be at the local mall. It could be at the fast food. I've worked so many jobs since I was 16. Pizza place, burger place, pharmacy, and there was a time I felt like there was no hope. There was like I would never do anything more. But then once you like connect with the right people, right, and they can open your mind, then you're like, wait, I'm capable of way more than I realized, and there's a whole new world that can be opened to you, right? Closed mouths do not get fed, okay? And your network is your net worth, so you definitely have to network, okay? We talked about this in previous podcasts. And also, complaining about your situation does not improve your situation, right? Worrying about your situation doesn't. Complaining doesn't. Now, venting might help you process it, but it's not going to get rid of the problem itself. So, yeah, it's a great video. We're probably going to wrap it up. It's a long one. It's 25 minutes, okay? So check this out. It's called It's Not Just You, No One Wants to Have Kids Anymore by Infographics channel. If you like this reaction, please hit the like button, subscribe for more. I'm going to do some more podcasts here this month. I hope you guys enjoy this reaction and previous podcast. Please check out the most recent one with Dr. Brett Manassa on mental health. So again, thank you for tuning in. If you like this, hit the like button, subscribe for more. And again, this is Mosh with Just Some Perspective. Peace.